Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's 5:02. We'll go ahead and get started. I know that there were some people who could not make it uh, tonight, and we did have to change the date, as many of you recall, because of the BRT meeting, which Stuart will be updating us all on this evening. So thank you. I'm your current chair, Lou Raiders, and as we all have gotten used to at this point, I record these meetings, upload them to the Cherry Creek North website, and then link everybody in so that you have those, and those really stand as our minutes. So we'll jump right in. I think this should be a really good meeting tonight. I'm excited about the updates and really excited to have the information that B. Stratton with Denver Water is going to be going over with us this evening. So we will start by going to Councilwoman Sawyer. Thank you for being here and ask for your updates.
Awesome. Well, it's great to see everyone. Thanks so much for having me as always. I so appreciate it. Lots going on at the city. I think most importantly for you all, we kicked off the budget yesterday. Um, so this would be the 2027 budget process that we started. We always start it with sort of a financial outlook. What is really concerning to me is that two things. First, our sales tax revenue, which makes up about 57% of our general fund, is down. So that is concerning. And, everyone's a little bit worried about what that means for the 2027 budget. I would say I suspect it will stay completely flat, as we budget into next year. And the goal would be to not reduce city services. That will just entirely be dependent on what the budgeting process looks like. So that piece was really concerning. The other piece that was really concerning is that there are $220 million worth of overspend by the mayor's office between 2023, 2024, and 2025. Um, that is extremely concerning. It's something that I learned about a couple of months ago. And what I am doing is working on a charter change amendment that would potentially come to you all as voters in November of 2026, that would set some sort of threshold flag where when in a budget reduction year, we see a space where the budget is going to need to be reduced by a certain amount. It requires notification and it requires a public conversation about kind of what comes next. Um, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. It will be a piece of sort of a larger charter change. So stay tuned. I will give you more information about that when I know about it. I'm going to tell you right now, the mayor's office and the administration do not like it, and I do not care because we're not going to do this again. How it happened is that the way the charter reads right now, when Denver City Council approves the budget in November of the prior year, so in this case, 2022, 2023, 2024, we approve up to a certain amount of money. And even if, like what happened in 2025, City Council votes down the budget by charter, it becomes law anyway. So the budget is set and it is what it is. If in a year the budget is then reduced because we see that there's economic impact and we had budgeted for more than what is actually going to come in, um, city council has still approved the full amount of expenditure. So, like, let's say, for example, we approved $1.75 billion worth of general fund expenditures in 2024, but only $1.6 billion came in. And so, the administration was authorized to spend up to $1.75 billion, even if $1.75 billion was not what came in, which means what happened was we were spending out of our savings account, right? That is not okay, and it is not something that am going to allow to continue as long as I have the power to change it. So stay tuned for more on that. But that was sort of the big conversation that happened this week. We are also working on legislation that would formalize the business impact opportunity fund into the Denver Revised Municipal Code. This is a fund that the city uses to help support businesses that are impacted during city construction. So this is horizontal construction. Think about things like the BRT on Colfax, or those bike lanes that went in on Broadway, the upgrades that are happening on Morrison Road right now. So it happens kind of all over the city. But that is what we're looking at there. So lots of things going on. In Cherry Creek, things are relatively quiet for the moment. Had a fantastic event on Monday. Was it Monday? It was Monday. It's been a long week, you guys. On Monday, with the Cherry Creek Chamber of Commerce, just looking at the future of Cherry Creek and all of the development that is going on, all of the opportunity that is coming. And I think really what I feel strongly about is that the city needs to keep up with all of that coming in terms of the infrastructure and all of those kinds of things. So, I'm pushing hard on that end. I think that's it. I will open it up for questions, and otherwise, I actually have to run to a kiddo thing, so I'm gonna jump off after questions, but really appreciate. I'm gonna try and stay on for a little while, Stuart, because I want to hear your take on the BRT meeting. I will say the Hilltop neighbors are having a meeting tonight for the residents of Hilltop as well. That Connor and I split the duty, so he's going to that one, I'm going to this one, and then doing some kid stuff tonight. But it'll be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. I will say, as the residents become more and more aware of the proposals and the discussions that are happening, they become louder and louder in their opposition to them. So, um, flagging that for you all as well. What questions do you guys have for me? So quiet.
I know, a smaller group
I
tonight.
know. I know. We'll
Um,
reach out if there's anything that you guys need.
well, thank you as always for being here. So we'll jump over to Richard and tell us a little bit about the beautiful bid.
Okay, the beautiful bid is it's a busy, busy, beautiful bid. Um, so I thought tonight I would just do a little construction update because it's dominating my days right now. So 250 Clayton has moved to the demolition phase, so that building will be coming down. They fenced off the area and closed the right of way and taken one lane of parking. 201 Fillmore, we're really hoping we get that right of way back in about 30 to 60 days. And we get that opened up. That building has been turned over to tenant finish. They're turning it over a floor at a time, working their way up, but they've turned over a majority of the floors. Both projects on Milwaukee, the apartment building and the office building, are moving along a little ahead of schedule, but we expect a January 27 turnover on both of those projects. Cherry Lane is above grade on the First Avenue side, and they're punching through the top of the parking deck for the building that's going above the parking deck right now. So that project is moving along quickly. Waldorf is in shoring excavation right now. You'll see a lot of road impacts, and I'm sure everybody drives in the neighborhood gets stopped as they're dropping down to one lane with flaggers. We're pulling in a lot of utilities for different projects. And that's going on throughout the neighborhood on Second Avenue, on Third Avenue, down some of the alleys. Working with the city to make sure that the end restoration is like or better conditions. Other than that, moving on to events, I just thought for today, instead of going through what events we're going to have, I just want to direct everybody to the community calendar on our website. I never go on there on our website, and I was really surprised to see all of the amazing events that all the individual stores have that are posted on there. So just for the whole group, go to the Cherry Creek North website, look at the community calendar. A lot of it's little insider stuff that's great. Somebody might do a great little event on Wednesdays. So if you're not working, it's great to pop into that store on Wednesdays. With that, I will take any questions anyone has.
Richard,
Okay.
I was wondering if you were able to talk about what you're doing with tree lawns. I know at one point you were working with the Botanic Gardens, I think, to figure out how to get good plantings, especially for buildings that had
Mhm.
highly reflective surfaces. And I saw a lot of Kentucky bluegrass, I thought, the other day. But could you talk a little bit about what's going on with that?
Yeah, well, we work with environmental designs on the landscape, not the Botanic Gardens. We have been removing turf slowly but surely. We have done some turf replacement, just like for like, where we had some turf beds that are continuing to stay turf. It was just remediation from damage in the winter. But starting last year, we really started moving up, and you'll see it on steel, removing turf and just adding planting beds and adding pet relief areas. Really trying to be water conscious is the best thing that we can do. And so we're trying to ensure we're trying to plant beautiful landscaping, but make sure we're being good stewards of the environment. So that being said, we're working with Denver Water to make sure that we're on great scheduling for this year. We're a pretty large area geographically that we irrigate, so we'll be kind of locked into a contract for a certain percentage decrease in our water usage with pretty severe penalties if we go over. But that will allow us to water not locked into the 2 days a week, which for us we can't water everything in 2 days a week. Um, but yeah, just trying to make those good decisions and make sure it still looks beautiful. So I'd say the landscape, the bulbs came in great.
Were you able to solve some of the? I thought you were trying to do some demonstration areas, trying to figure out how to deal with reflective areas, like at the where Amazon used to be, where that financial building. Uh, was
Yeah,
anything successful?
yeah, we went through multiple plantings there. I can't tell you the species that's in there. It's really Pat's world, but we were successful there. So
Great.
we
Good
did go through the
news.
trees were the big challenge there. We had the landscape figured out. We went through 3 rounds of trees before we got the right tree. I was ready to go to a cactus, but they tried one last tree and it worked.
Thank goodness. No cactus,
Yeah.
not yet. Give it a few more years of this dry,
Oh,
hot beat. Okay, any questions for Richard? Richard, thank you as always for being here and for the updates. Um,
welcome.
if not, we will turn it over to Stuart, who will report on the transportation issues related to the BRT. The meeting was held last Wednesday at our normal time. So take it away, Stuart.
Are you folks seeing my slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, let me cover kind of where we're at with this particular study. First off, we are at a point in the study where we're looking at alternatives and narrowing those alternatives to ones that will receive further analysis. That's really the exercise for 2006. In 2007, we'll be moving forward with that preferred alternative and doing the concept level design, the 30% design for that, as well as the NEPA work that's going to need to be done. So if you look over to the right-hand side, you can see the quarter plan was finished in 2024. Then we did the alternative analysis and moving in towards the final design. The intent is to get the service up and running in 2030. During the course of this study, it's had a very limited budget, and every time there's a new bell or whistle to be covered, they just shorten it. This drawing that I have is no longer representative of what they're pursuing. It looks like the endpoint on the south side will be Yale and Colorado, or even less than that. That's yet to be determined. It might even be just Colorado Station. Those are yet to be determined, and something that you could certainly bring up in our next open house that I'll explain a little further. What you're going to learn at the open house is that out of the various alternatives, they are narrowing it to two, and that CDOT management is recommending that we continue to further analyze these two options. One option is where we do not have dedicated lanes, but we do have the BRT function on the side with, if you look down to the bus stop there, you'll see that part of what a BRT is about is getting people to pay for their fares before boarding, and other factors that make the bus go more quickly. So even in the mixed flow alternative, they would have less time than the current number 40 bus, in that you'd be already paying before you board it. It would be much like getting on a light rail. The other alternative is to have the dedicated lanes. What you'll hear in the open house is that they're trying to rule out center lane. And they looked at center lane as an option. They looked at half the corridor being center lane and half being side. And what management is recommending that we move forward with is only side running BRT. Now, you've probably seen the Colfax BRT being built. Well, that's really a center boarding. That will be different from what we would see on Colorado Boulevard. So these are the two alternatives that they continue to look at. I sent them a letter expressing our concerns, and we've had some decent dialogue with the intent in getting together to have a specific conversation in July about Cherry Creek. But in the letter that I sent out, I expressed concern that they are planning a transit corridor without origin and destination data for Cherry Creek in particular, which was a really big concern. They cannot tell us if they estimate one person using it going to Cherry Creek or 1,000 people using it to Cherry Creek. That is simply unacceptable as a transportation professional. I don't know how you can plan transit without people. So that was the biggest concern that we've had thus far. They've not done this because of budget concerns. And, I can appreciate budget concerns, but, it's like building a house and not having a roof. You got to have enough to make it work. We need to know who's going to be headed to Cherry Creek. We have asked that they provide accommodation of the Cherry Creek travelers. We asked at the beginning of the study to study, this is not a commitment, just a study of a turnout whereby the ERT would enter into the Cherry Creek area and get as far in as First and Steel. That would allow people to be able to use the BRT without having to transfer. If there is a transfer, we have brought up the issue of a mobility hub at Burns Park and having micro mobility options like scooters and bikes and other items that can help get people from Colorado Boulevard. We also talked about improving the walkways as a way to connect to that as well. They have not done anything with that. Shuttle service from Colorado Boulevard to Cherry Creek North was another suggestion that we had early in the study. They did not study that or have given any consideration to it. The part that I have the hardest part is, as I've said, I think last month, I'm the kind of guy that if you tell me 2 + 2 = 3, you're never going to sell me. I mean, it's got to equal 4. And we're working with some numbers that make absolutely no sense to me. With the dedicated lanes, we would be reducing in some parts about 1/3 of the car capacity of Colorado Boulevard. But their projection is that only 15% of drivers on Colorado Boulevard would switch to the BRT. So when you put the numbers out there and you look at, we've got 3,000 riders on the number 40 today. We've got varying levels of traffic flow at various parts of Colorado Boulevard, ranging from about 45,000 trips or cars, as we might say it, to 66,000. If we took 15% of those two numbers, we would be adding 6,750 plus the 3,000 up to the 9,900 plus 3,000. But that still leaves us with about 15 to 18% of the cars being displaced without an alternative. Well, the alternative is University Boulevard, but that's already at capacity. So the question is, if you're displacing cars, where do you intend them to go? and they do not have an answer for that. And that's unacceptable from my perspective. I'm 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 for transit, but we can't just leave people at these intersections. And I brought this issue up with CDOT, that many of these intersections will be pushed into what we call level of service F, which means you have to wait a whole signal cycle to get through. And so it means those that depend on cars to get into Cherry Creek, because BRT can't serve everyone, will have much longer commutes. And they haven't studied this. They can't tell us what the delay would be for people who have to use their car. I pointed out to CDOT currently, and this is the truth, we have more people carpooling to Cherry Creek than we do using the bus. And so carpoolers depend on the road network too. Reducing stops is an issue that we have some trouble with. I know Glendale has raised concerns about it. Glendale has essentially 5 stops on the 40 right now. If you look at the map, and this is something they haven't worked out in detail, they'd be reducing it to 2 stops. Well, that means either you're going to stop in front of Target and provide access for those employees, or you're going to stop at Home Depot. You can't really serve a linear community if you're reducing the stops that much. The low budget issue has been an issue for me. They've stuck with $85 million as the budget. That's not enough. We know that's not enough for the federal corridor where they're studying that as well. And then one thing I'm just going to have to point out, and these are many of my colleagues, our transit advocates are very active these days, and they go to lots of meetings, and they dominate the meetings. They go into these meetings intentionally wanting to dominate the conversation so that all of the input is of a positive nature. And the issue came up with even this Hilltop meeting tonight, that these advocates want to attend the R&O meetings so that they can again dominate the conversation. And my opinion is no, let Hilltop residents attend the session and ask their questions. Don't invite in a bunch of Greater Denver Transit advocates and Denver Street Partnership advocates and bike folks that are going to be there, because we're not hearing what people say. And the last meeting that we had for the steering committee was highly biased because everything was positive in the discussions, it seemed, and that's not reflective of the community. So we do have our second open house that's coming up. This is the information. I know that Lou has sent around some additional information. I would encourage you to go learn about what's being proposed. Express your concerns if you want to borrow any of my points and further strengthen those. Please feel free to do that. CDOT's response to my letter was very positive. They said that they will produce origin destination data. They will examine many of the elements of this letter, but they're going to need until July to be able to pull it all together. So that's the intent. I was very satisfied with their response. And then lastly, I just wanted to make note that the Spear First Leetsdale BRT study is on the cusp of beginning. Last month, they were out with the RFP on the street, and they now have selected the firm of Nelson Nygaard. Nelson Nygaard is a transit company out of San Francisco. They have a few employees here in Denver. I really like their employees here in Denver. So I'm really happy. I think that we'll have a better dialogue with this team than we have with the Colorado Boulevard team. Just my opinion. So that's it. Any questions?
We are so lucky to have you, Stuart, and I certainly know that there's a big hill to climb here. Councilwoman, you're still here. Do you have anything to add or questions?
I just actually wanted to ask a question of Stuart in terms of the likelihood that we have an opportunity to create change here, right? I appreciate that the state has been working hard to do some more and better outreach to connect with residents. I will say I'm extremely concerned about the transit advocates attending RNO meetings. I have seen transit advocates become abusive and inappropriate with our residents who express an opinion different than what the transit advocates have to say, and it's really concerning and inappropriate. So I'm just curious, like, tell me, do you think we have a shot at creating and making actual change when it comes to having these conversations, especially around getting a loop around or something into Cherry Creek?
I think that, we're looking at three BRT lines that would go through Cherry Creek at some point. So the Alameda line, the Colorado Boulevard line, and the Spear First Leetsdale line. That would give us the ultimate frequency. Anybody who wanted to get into Cherry Creek would have tremendous access, and that's probably a good thing longer term. But the reality that I shared with CDOT offline was that there is no way that they're going to be able to dedicate those lanes to BRT before the other BRT lines are open. It makes no sense. And we're going to have a rebellion. The neighborhoods will explode when they get, 15% of Colorado Boulevard traffic running through their streets. I think there's going to be a rebellion. And I felt that if they do start it out with not having dedicated lanes, they need to have a date when it would be converted. That would make it meaningful. If we just go forward with just the Colorado Boulevard BRT line, we don't build the full network, I don't think we're doing anything better than what we have today with the number 40. And we have trouble with that. You simply can't get people from Colorado Station up Colorado Boulevard fast enough to let people use rail. And I think that's a big factor because, when I worked in the gold building there in Glendale and we did some surveys, people who were taking the bus from the station were reporting travel times of 20 to 30 minutes just to get from Colorado Station to Glendale. And that doesn't work. And so we pretty much, given our location, have been deprived of a lot of the investment in transit. And so we need to make sure that this connects with us. We absolutely need transit. If you remember last month, I showed kind of the projections. We really need to be aggressive about this. And I think we can. And I think there can be change.
Stuart, quick follow-up question for you. We know that per capita, Cherry Creek is the #1 revenue driver for the city and county of Denver. If we take out per capita, it's the #2 revenue driver for the city and county of Denver after downtown, more than the airport, in either case. So I'm just curious whether, I don't know, what the state percentage of revenue is that Cherry Creek generates. So that's #1. And if you don't, totally get it. But the reason I'm asking is sort of because of my second point, which is to say, I think it will be really valuable to remind the state of Colorado how valuable Cherry Creek is as a true hub for not only the city of Denver, but the state of Colorado. So I think that we have a lot of power here that we're not using. And I want to just make sure that we start using it as best we can because this is not okay. And I'm so appreciative of your advocacy efforts, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help.
Absolutely. And let me just say, we're kind of in an environment where the tax base is less important than the equity issue. And Cherry Creek has a big equity issue too. So whether it be the tax base or our equity, we have about 60% of our employees are in the lower income categories of work categories. So we have both.
Bravo. Yeah, what she said. So Annette.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I haven't talked to anybody that thinks this is a good plan.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone thinks that this is completely nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I have encouraged people to go to the meetings this, like the one that's in Hilltop up.
Yeah.
And in talking to several people, they said, well, what's the point? The city's going to do what the city's going to do. And I reiterated that you get a lot of people using bikes and rapid transit that go to these meetings, and that you need to go there and tell your side. You have to go. Otherwise, they only hear from the people who want it. But
Absolutely.
there's been huge concerns, and I've not just talked to people in Cherry Creek. I mean, I've talked to people up in Windsor Gardens who
Mhm.
say, we don't come down there now because it's so bad. Why would we, if they're going to take away 2 lanes of traffic, it's just going to push stuff to the neighborhoods. And I will tell you right now, and that when I want to get like to Lowry and stuff, I go up Third Avenue and cut right through the neighborhoods, and I see that happening more and more and more because I don't want to take Alameda, and I don't want to take Leetsdale to get to Alameda, and I don't want to get on Colorado Boulevard. And
Yeah.
if you make Colorado Boulevard that much more inaccessible, people are just going to go cut through neighborhoods. That's what they're going to do. And they're going to create a problem on University because everyone's going to switch to University and everyone's going to switch to Downing. And those streets are going to be a mess. So anyway, my 2 cents, but I think it's nuts.
Mhm.
Hey, Annette, can I just say it's not the city of Denver.
The state,
state of
then, it's
Colorado.
nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Well, we got to get people to show up on May 13th.
Yeah.
Can
So
I ask just one more question? Why did the state decide to do it?
There was a study RTD did in 2018 and 2019 where they looked at bus rapid transit as an alternative. I think this is just my opinion. We always seem to opt for the cheapest alternative. We're scared to make commitments to put in things that might have a more lasting effect. And we went with the low budget solution. And since that time, because of that report, it's been written into agreements with the federal agencies that fund this. And so at this point, it's pretty much set in stone. It's in the 2050 plan. It's the direction that we're headed. I think that it was a mistake because people react to BRT less than they would, say, a trolley being restored in a particular area or other ways of getting people around. But it's this low budget mentality that we have that has led to this becoming the solution.
Linda.
Stuart, first, thanks for all your expertise and passion around this. As an RNO, how can we be proactive and thoughtful around a timeline so that we're not calling wolf now and then we have to wait 5, 6, 10 months or 3 years? What's an effective time frame that we really can start introducing around our neighborhoods so that they're informed rather than misled and revolting?
Right now. Right now is the critical time when they're looking at the alternatives, because next year there will be a selected alternative and we'll be talking about designing it without any latitude. Right now, there are alternatives, and we had 5 alternatives that have been screened down to 2 alternatives. And so this is the time you need to speak up. It really is an important time to go to this open house.
And, at the stakeholder meeting last week, it was pretty clear that there's still a percentage of people who just say no BRT on Colorado.
Mhm.
And I think people think there's a place for better transit, but what does it really look like? And I think, that following Stuart's lead here and making sure that it is thoughtful and that we have the data to rely on. That's going to be key. So even if, I mean, 2 weeks from now on May 13th, we're not going to have that data, right, Stuart? So
Yep.
you're probably still going to have a lot of people just saying no
Yep.
instead of having enough information to say, how will it really work?
If I were to estimate, I would say we'd have less than 1,000 people using that BRT to come to Cherry Creek. Yet the capacity for people to get to Cherry Creek with their car will be highly constrained. And so it doesn't add up.
I mean,
So-
there is the connection to Colfax and, oh, bye, Councilwoman, thank you for being here. And the connection to 40th, so people can catch the A train. But, you know, that those are sort of a different way of thinking about this than what is the immediate need and the immediate future need in Cherry Creek.
If they brought the BRT temporarily into Cherry Creek until the other BRT lines are built, then they might have the capacity to switch enough drivers into using transit. But without that as even a consideration at this point, I can't see how they could possibly dedicate any lanes to BRT only.
So really the way that then the conversation is reframed is the alternatives that they currently have don't work, which doesn't mean that you just say no. It's that you go back to the alternatives and say you need to swing it through at least a first and steel at some way to be able to, and it seems to me that part of that's got to be first because you've got to get all those employees comfortably to UC Health. I mean, they're a huge employer. They have a lot of people working there and the banks. And so if you did that and you hit that corridor and then you went down to Alameda, you hit the mall. You don't go right into Cherry Creek North, but you get close enough if you just hit First and Steel that you could really help employees get to work. You also pick up, you know, hundreds of people who live in the concentrated areas along First in the apartment buildings so that it's still a little bit far from Cherry Creek West, but that's not going to be populated for a long time. So we just worry about where people are currently living. And those are right in that corridor. So it's got to be able to be reconsidered instead of just saying no, because we know we have a real problem getting people into work in Cherry Creek. It's hard on them, so a BRT where it would be fast and reliable and connect to the train at Colorado Station and the BRT up on Colfax is critical. But they have to, you know, again, that destination study has to be done first. So what I'm afraid of in a way is, and I am thinking out loud, is that you're going to get a lot of people that just say no. And it's because a lot of those people, me included, are people who get in their cars more than they get on transit. And so we still do have to think with a mindset of how do we better the situation for Cherry Creek. And but you'll get a lot of people who won't be thinking that way. They will just, I think you'll get a lot of just no people, which is fair because I think that's a concern. But we have to remember what a horrible situation we're in right now in serving our businesses. Annette?
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to take me. I'm not going to ride bus rapid transit to the Colorado station or to 40th. I'm not going to haul my suitcase, go to a place, get on a bus. I'm just not going to do that. And so I don't go to work. So I'm probably going to stay in my car. And I will say that I used to take the train downtown a lot. I would take my car and drive to the Evans, to the train station, and take the train downtown. And I would do that if I had time. But I could be downtown parked in the museum parking lot by the time and be walking over to catch the mall shuttle or walking to wherever I wanted to go. In the time it took me to go to the Colorado station, let alone catch the train and get downtown. So I think that so much is time. Time is money. And you're just not going to get a lot of people out of your cars. I mean, maybe you will. Maybe, Lou, you'll take your suitcase and get on the bus and stuff, but I know I'm not going to do it.
Well, and I don't think necessarily just about me. I'm thinking about how we impact those percentages that Stuart talked about to get people to get out of their cars who have a destination in Cherry Creek, who work here. And you're not going to feel the impact of the lightening of the traffic unless you can provide destinations for people who will take the bus. It may not be you and it may not be me, likely not. But, certainly as parking gets more expensive, and it will, as parking becomes more difficult, and it will get more difficult downtown, even at the art, at Dam and other areas that are destinations. So people will be constantly rethinking about what works best for them. And even though it may not be you and it might not be me, because we may just say, oh, well, I'll just valet somewhere because I don't want to get out of my car because I'm, in 70s, and that's fair. But there are lots and lots of other people that this could impact to get them off of the road so that maybe we can continue to enjoy that ability to get between point A and point B in a reasonable time frame. But that's just it. It just takes a broader thought process. And unfortunately, Stuart, and I guess this is a question to you, and then we're going to wrap this up because I really do want to get to be. We've got this conversation out there on the 13th without having some of these alternatives that make sense. So how do you go to these and interject that we need this information, we need the destination studies so that we know how the greater good is served for everybody, those in cars and those with the destination of trying to get to work or downtown or wherever. How do you respond when we don't have those alternatives yet? Because at that point, people are just going to say no.
I think obviously I'm highly biased and think my points are the key points they need to hear. But I think asking questions like how many of the bus riders are going to be destined Cherry Creek? And when they say to you, well, we don't know, then it's probably like, how can you plan without knowing that? That reinforces the need to get that data and other, the bells and whistles that make it all work. So right now they're really looking more from the perspective of how do we get buses from Colorado Station to Colfax and not people. I'm not sure there's anybody traveling from Colorado Station to Colfax to get to downtown. People are in Colorado because they're headed to Cherry Creek and to Glendale. So,
well, and that's another reason to Councilwoman Sawyer's point, which is to remind people of the importance of Cherry Creek and the business impact on the city budget and the state budget.
Mhm.
It's critical because everything, these pieces are supposed to fit together. So thank you again for your expertise, Stuart. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Annette, Linda, thanks for the questions and for everybody to stay tuned on this because obviously it's important and it's the first conversation. If we're talking about First and Spear Leasdale corridor, right around the corner, everybody's got to be able to be educated enough so that they know some of these nuanced parts of the analysis, and that's why Stuart's involvement here with us is so important. So thank you, Stuart. Okay, we are going to move on. B. Stratton is here with Denver Water. I have done some diligence after our last meeting about what resources there might be. And for gardeners like Annette and for me, this is really exciting and important. And there's so much more out there than I understood initially. So I'm going to turn it over to B. B, I've given you the ability to share your screen. So take it away on all things water conservation and xeriscape, etc.
Thank you so much, Lou. Yeah, so I am B. Stratton. I'm with Denver Water, and I manage our landscape transformation program. So I'm really focused on water conservation through landscapes. And so, can everyone see my screen, first of all?
Yes.
Great. Let's just see if we can get the clicking to go right. So this is just a roadmap of the presentation. I'm going to talk to you a bit about who Denver Water is, just to make sure everybody understands who we are as a utility, talk about where our water comes from. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of the current drought call that we're in, talk about why Denver Water is interested in landscape transformation, and then kind of do a breakdown of our programs and resources, and then give you a case study, kind of a before and after on a landscape transformation with some water savings. So Denver Water is Colorado's largest and oldest utility. This is something that I don't think everyone is aware of, but we are funded through water rates. So what you pay for your water bill and not through tax dollars. So we are separate of the city in that we are part of a separate charter. So we're kind of insulated and operating in coordination with the city, but not synonymously with the city and county of Denver. We deliver water to more than 1.5 million people. So we serve 25% of Colorado's population with less than 2% of the water. So we're pretty efficient with what we have. And we have 20 dams and reservoirs in our system. So I like to show this image because I think the name Denver Water can be misleading. It would lead you to think that we only serve the Denver metro area, but we actually have a huge service area. So you can see the darker blue is kind of like the Denver area that you would assume we serve out to the airport, but then we have this like teal, lighter green color that gets into Centennial, Greenwood Village, Littleton, Wheat Ridge, parts of Lakewood, and we serve all of those customers. We have 18 different distributors within our service area, and so what that means is that we can service water through different providers. So the bill might come from a different name or entity, but the water is actually being served through Denver Water. And this is just kind of a snapshot of where our water comes from. So 50% of our water comes from the Colorado River Basin, 50% comes from the South Platte River Basin, and 80% of the precipitation falls west of the Continental Divide, 20% east. And then you kind of flip those numbers for population. So 80% of the population is east of the Continental Divide. And that creates a lot of complexity with water rights and infrastructure to pull water to our city center. I think it's probably pretty obvious that we've been in a drought. We've had a historically really dry year, really warm year, and we really didn't get a winter. I'm really grateful for the moisture we've had the last few days, but no matter how much moisture we get in the next couple of months, there's really no making up for what we've lost with our snowpack this year. I thought it'd be good to share just the drought, the U.S. Drought Monitor, to kind of really illustrate the picture of how bad it is in our state. So most of the state is operating in severe, extreme, or exceptional drought. And the Denver area is almost all in that bright red or extreme drought scenario. So water conservation should be top of mind right now. We have announced restrictions as the water utility. So anyone with a landscape and an irrigation system is going to be beholden to some restrictions this year. A couple of just facts or drought indicators are that we had the warmest October through February in Colorado history. Our City of Denver records say that we had the second snowless February on record, and that we had the second warmest winter to 1933-34 year. And this is just kind of echoing the picture that we just saw. We are in extreme drought, and we've got a task force, and we're working with other providers, and really most of the Front Range has gone on restrictions. So Denver Water has implemented stage 1 drought. So typically what we would do is go into a drought watch year and kind of just be on alert and then go into stage 1. And it was so bad this year that we skipped drought watch and went straight to stage 1. We have not declared a drought since 2013. So what that means for residential customers is that we are asking everyone across the service area to reduce what they're using by 20%. That could be indoors or outdoors. And obviously outdoors is kind of the area where there's a lot of room for improvement. But also we're limiting, normally our watering rules are, we suggest 3 days a week for outdoor irrigation. And we are asking everyone to follow assigned irrigation days. And we're only doing 2 days a week this year. So we're just, doing that by odds and evens. So if you have an odd number address, you can irrigate on Wednesday and Saturday. And if you have an even numbered address, you can irrigate on Sunday and Thursday. So you can go to denverwater.org/conserve to get more details on our water restrictions and any drought information. We release new updates every Monday on the status of things and our snowpack. So just something important and top of mind for us to talk about as we start to talk about our landscapes. So I'll delve into outdoor water use and some solutions. I always like to start with this statistic. So we know that about half of single-family residential water use is used outdoors. So essentially, we're dropping half of our very limited resource, very precious resource on our lawns. And to me, this just illuminates an area of opportunity for us to really get efficient with how we're operating and how we're irrigating and what we're planting in our landscapes. So this is a breakdown of Denver Water's retail treated water sales. So you can see the breakdown from this graph on the left that single family residential is almost half of who we serve water to. And so when you look at that graph on the right, just as I was telling you before, this is a breakdown of all water use for a single family household. And you can see that the lion's share, 50%, is outdoor water use. So again, just illuminating that this is really the space where Denver Water customers can start to conserve. So in 2022, our former CEO signed a memorandum of understanding with about 30 other utilities and municipalities throughout the Colorado River Basin. And this came from a call from the Bureau of Reclamation that basically said anyone pulling from the Colorado River needed to reduce what they were taking and come up with a plan on reductions. That memorandum of understanding really reinvigorated an effort on the part of Denver Water and specifically my team, Efficiency and Conservation, of standing up landscape programs to support our customers in saving water through their landscapes. We do this because of climate change. You know, we are going to experience more extreme temperature swings and drier years, just like we're experiencing this year. We want our communities to grow and thrive, and we want them to build resilience to these really hot, dry years. So if we put the right plant in the right place, we'll be better prepared for that, and we'll also be using less water. We want to be good environmental stewards, and we want to support you in being a good environmental steward. And we think this is just the Colorado way. So I mentioned that memorandum of understanding, and there were a series of things that came out of that, aspirations and goals. But the main thing that came out of this was a commitment to reduce our non-functional turf grass by 30%. And I think it's important to define what non-functional means. This is not a war on turf. It's not saying that all grass is bad. It's just trying to take into the concept, lean into the concept of right plant, right place. So areas that are providing value to communities like parks and sports fields and areas of your lawn that your dogs and children are recreating on, that's not what we're talking about. That's totally functional and providing value. But these large swaths and medians going through town that are being irrigated and we're half irrigating the road and they're only being stood on to be mowed, those are areas for opportunity. Maybe we don't need to be irrigating that much in those spaces. So really just trying to identify what works and doesn't work for our communities, and then putting in more climate resilient landscaping where we decide it is non-functional. So 30% of the non-functional turf in our service area equates to about 75 million square feet. And obviously Denver Water doesn't own that much property. So the only way to achieve this is to empower you, our customer, to partner with partners like the City and County of Denver and other municipalities within our service area to basically implement these landscape transformation projects. So we want to do that through education, changing hearts and minds, letting people know how important the water is, and just making this top of mind for all of our residents. We want to leverage our knowledge and resources with our partners. And we want to increase biodiversity and wildlife. We want to expand and protect the tree canopy, and just take into consideration all the unintended consequences of removing turf, and try to make it a well-rounded program. So we have done a few things to be thoughtful about the programming that we're building. We have started to change our language around landscapes, which we'll get into in a moment. We've done an internal audit of Denver Water's properties and tried to identify our own non-functional turf. We are working through partnerships, expanding our residential offerings, working with HOAs, and trying to focus on disproportionately impacted communities that haven't traditionally had resources available to them, and making sure we're not leaving them behind as well. So I always like to show this kind of comparison. On the left, I would consider that to be a xeriscape. So Denver Water coined the term xeriscape in the 1980s, and it's a word that's been adopted internationally and has done really well for us. But we have noticed that our customers are sometimes saying zeroscape, Z-E-R-O. And that is really the antithesis of what we are talking about. We are not talking about rock lawns, and we are not talking about landscapes that only have one or two cacti in them. We don't want to look like Arizona. We're not Arizona. And there are a whole host of unintended consequences that come along with a landscape on the left. So this is tidy. This looks really neat and tidy, and it's using very little water, which is amazing. Water savings is one of the goals that we have, but it's not the only goal. And by ripping out a lawn and dumping rocks down, you're actually increasing the urban heat island effect in your community. So it becomes very hot. You're not attracting any pollinators or supporting wildlife with this landscape. You are probably degrading the soil, because often when people are dumping rocks on a lawn, they're laying plastic down between it, which means that our ground nesting bees and insects cannot access the soil, and that soil is completely degrading and providing no benefit to the community as well. So I always like to show these photos side by side. I 100% understand that the photo on the right is like Botanic Gardens level gardening and not attainable for everyone in their house, but I think that it illustrates the difference in what we're talking about. So we have transitioned from using the term xeriscape to Coloradoscape, because we think it more fully encompasses the type of environment that we're talking about. Aside from water savings, which we 100% want, we also want to beautify a space. We want to attract and support pollinators. We want to increase soil health. We want to cool the environment. And this photo on the right is a real contrast of the rock lawn versus a biodiverse, thriving habitat. So this is one of the things that we're doing as we start to kind of assess how we're talking about landscapes. I also mentioned that we're doing our own internal audit of Denver water properties. We have our own non-functional turf, and we have started to do landscape transformations and experiment with them in various ways to learn from them and just try different methods and share those results. And I wanted to share this photo. This is the first project I managed at one of our pump stations, and we removed 1,250 square feet of non-functional turf and put in almost 400 low water plants. And I wanted to show these pictures side by side because it really illustrates the sleep, creep, and leap concept of a perennial planting. So in June of 2023, that photo on the left, that's the day that the plants went in the ground. And even when the plants were still in their pot, I started to see pollinators and insects kind of show interest. So it immediately changed the landscape before they even went in the dirt. A little less than a year later, those plants are 3 times the size, thriving, blooming, looking great. And then just a few months later, in September of 2024, those plants are like 5-6 times the size of the first photo. Less blooms because we're going into the fall, but just really cool to see, through time how these landscapes change. So now we'll get to the good stuff. We'll start talking about our programs that you might be interested in. We partner with Resource Central. They are a nonprofit based out of Boulder, Colorado, that focus on building water conservation programming for utilities to offer customers. So I'm sure some of you have heard of our Garden in a Box program. This is essentially a plant by number. You can order a garden designed by a horticulturist, sometimes from the Botanic Gardens, and they'll cover 60 to 100 square feet. The plants are ready to go in the ground when you pick them up. You get a little planting map, you get maintenance instructions, descriptions of each plant, and they're way less expensive than if you were going to go to a nursery and pick out the same palette of plants. So a really approachable, affordable way to get a low water planting plan and a whole host of low water plants to kind of start this on your own property. We also started in the last few years offering support on turf removal. We did some focus groups and surveys, and physically removing the turf was one of the biggest barriers for customers, and it's very expensive. So we have started to offer support up to $750 for customers who go through Resource Central and apply to that program. We've had a huge response to our programs this year, I think, because of the drought. So we are currently full on turf removal support for 2026, but there is a wait list. So if you are interested in this, go ahead and fill out an application and just get ready for a project next year. We also offer a $25 discount off of gardens for Denver Water customers. That's a limited thing that sells out within a few days. So those gardens went on sale in March. They're still available, but the $25 discount is done at this moment. But if you're interested in getting that discount next year, you can get on the Resource Central email list, and they'll let you know the day that the plants are going to go on sale, and you can set an alarm to get that discount. We also offer free slow the flow irrigation audits through Resource Central, where they'll come and do a full assessment of your irrigation system, give you a list of any inefficiencies, breaks, and basically give you a report to go and fix it and be as efficient as you can be with what you have. And then they program your clock for you after as well. We also offer free landscape-focused workshops. We just did one a couple weeks ago that was all focused on native grass installation, and it was really well attended. The next one we have this year will be on August 29th, and it is all about DIY Colorado-scaping. We'll have a few people talking about their own projects, and we'll go through a DIY guide that I'll tell you about in a moment, and just go through the step-by-step process of planning all the way through maintenance of a Colorado-scape. We also fund the Resource Central webinar program. So they have a curriculum of webinars that go throughout the entire season that are landscape focused. And they go from like turf removal methods, irrigation, support. It could all just be about low water plants. It's a full curriculum, and you can check that out at resourcecentral.org. This is the DIY landscape transformation guide I was telling you about. This is a 60+ page document that really gets into the details of planning a landscape transformation. It's totally free. You can access it on our website. You can use the QR code to get to it. But this is something we did in partnership with the Colorado Water Conservation Board and Resource Central. And it's full of such wonderful information. So if you're planning on doing anything like this, I really suggest flipping through the guide. We also have it available in Spanish. And then I 3 years ago, started a free native grass seed program. So we have mixture of buffalo grass and blue grama grass available to our customers. We have a request form online, and it essentially just asks you some basic questions to figure out if your project is the right fit for this seed. Each bag will cover 500 square feet. And we have detailed instructions on the label, even more instructions on our website. If you go to denverwater.org/conserve, you can kind of scroll through that page. Right now it says we're on a wait list. We do have enough seed to keep fulfilling orders, but we, just to give you an example of just how we're getting hit with our programs this year, very differently than previous years. I gave out 385 bags of seed in the whole season in 2025, and we turned on the request form on April 1st, and I had to turn it off in 4 hours. We had 450 requests by noon, and no one advertised it. I was watching like 3 requests a minute come in. So people are looking for solutions. It's really exciting, but I was not prepared for that influx, so I had to order new seed, and so we're just getting our ducks in a row. But if you're interested in this, please do put yourself on the wait list and we'll get to you within the next month. This photo on the right is 100% blue grama lawn. So it's slightly different than the mix that we have. We have a mix of buffalo grass and blue grama, but I just think this is such a beautiful photo. The reason I chose the mix that I did is that you can keep it long and more naturalized like this, or you can mow it and maintain it more like a traditional manicured lawn. But at the end of the day, this grass uses about 6 gallons per square foot, and Kentucky bluegrass uses about 20 gallons per square foot. So really less than a third the amount of water, and really beautiful, and it will thrive through our hot summers. And in the end, we're on watering restrictions this year. Once you establish a native grass lawn, you only need to water it once a week, or you could go to once a month if you don't want it to be like lush and green. And so you would naturally be abiding by watering restrictions, and it wouldn't phase your landscape, which is really cool. We also have the Landscape Transformation Assistance Program. This is really geared towards public spaces and HOAs. It's essentially a micro grant program where Denver Water will cost share a landscape transformation. And it's just an application process that opens in the fall. And so we're full for 2026, but if you have an HOA or public space through an organization you're affiliated with, you could apply to the program fall of 2026 and be considered for 2027 projects. And then everything I mentioned is on denverwater.org/conserve. You can go there and toggle around. If you click on Coloradoscape, you'll be able to check out everything I just spoke about. And then I'm just going to quickly run you through my DIY testimonial. So this is going to be my landscape transformation at my house. So to set the scene for you, this is disgusting and hideous. This is my house in the summer of 2022. I didn't have an in-ground irrigation system, but I was regularly watering in previous years. I did not irrigate for the whole summer. I was getting dirty looks from my neighbors. And then this photo on the right is maybe one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my whole life. I let that gravel bed go, all those weeds grow up and go to seed, and I'm still dealing with bindweed because of it. But I was ready to do something different. The landscape wasn't working for me. It was taking tons and tons of water for it to still look bad. So here's my before picture, and here's my after picture. So I used Garden in a Box. This is a Google Maps photo of my house just 2 years later. So this would be not considered fully established. These landscapes take about 3 years to establish. But what we did was remove all that gravel from that super weedy bed. We built a bioswale from the downspout to the tree that we had planted in the front. So it's redirecting water to the tree. I put Garden in a Box with a mixture of other low water plants, and then got an irrigation system put in. So all that is on drip now, and built some new planter beds. And I'm, this is a wild difference. I'm very proud of it. It did look weird for a little bit. It takes a little bit for these plants to grow in, but I'm very happy with the landscape now. So how did I do it? I went to Home Depot, and my husband was traveling, and so I just went by myself. I'm like, I'm going to get a sod cutter. No big deal. I'm just do this by myself. And I go there and I'm like, hey, I'll take a sod cutter. And they're like, cool, who's with you? And I'm like, nobody. And they're like, well, what are you putting it in? And I'm like, my CRV. And they're like, no, you're not. You have to get a truck. It's not going to fit. So I rent a truck. I'm like, give me a truck. I get to my house, and I cannot get this thing off the truck. So I just go and knock on my neighbor's door. I'm like, hey, Mark, can I just rope you into this thing? And he goes, well, how much did you pay for it? Like, I'll just give you half. Let's do my lawn too. So I influenced my neighbor to take out his front lawn as well. So it didn't come without some calluses. Photo on the right is just showing you really how bad the soil was, but just the depth that I cut. And I was done within a couple hours. I had it back and forth to Home Depot in a couple hours. It wasn't the most fun thing I've ever done, but it wasn't insurmountable. This is the garden that I bought from Resource Central. So it was called Splendid Seasons, and it covered about 300 square feet. Their current garden plans do not cover that much ground, but you can combine a few to do the same thing. And here's an example of the planting plan and just plant detail. I didn't follow the planting plan. I kind of did my own thing, but just to kind of show you how the information you get through Resource Central. Here's my cost breakdown. All in, I spent less than $5,000. I was in grad school at the time, so I was really working on a budget, and I think the most I spent was on the irrigation system, which is still pretty inexpensive for what I had done. I have 12 zones now. And then the labor for moving the rock was something that I didn't do myself, because if I look at a shovel, I'll have to go to a chiropractor. So I did not dig that rock up. And we, instead of removing the turf that was cut, we flipped it and built berms to make, just create some geographical interest. And rather than it just being a flat lawn, so we didn't have to dump it or take it somewhere else, which is often kind of a pain. And this is the thing I like to show. So in July of 2020, so before any of this happened, I used 18,000 gallons of water on my landscape. And as you can see here, my water use target is 15,000 gallons. So in July of 2022, I used 4,000 gallons. So I went from 18 to 4. So I just think I'm very proud of those numbers, and this works. And the landscape is thriving, and that grass was never thriving. Here are some other photos. I had to compress this file because it was so big, so everything's a little pixelated. I'm sorry. But here are some photos of my garden this past fall. So everything's a lot bigger. The blooms aren't as bright because we're about to go into winter at this point, or what we thought was going to be winter. But you can see that there's a huge spread of plants. They're a lot bigger than that other photo. Photo on the left is giant sacaton grass, which adds really good winter interest. Photo on the right is rabbit brush, one of my favorite plants that needs almost no water, and it really brightens up and turns yellow in the fall. So really, really great for fall and winter interest. There's lots of pollinator activity. I have Jupiter's beard or red valerian, and I think that's my most popular plant for pollinators. So we get lots of moths, lots of butterflies, little praying mantis. I just thought he was cute. And this is my coneflower, and it's just so many different species on it at once. I thought that was interesting, and that dragonfly doesn't even look real. And that's it. So I'll open it up to questions. I hope that wasn't too long.
It was terrific. Thank you so much. I'm sure there are questions. Anybody?
Who's doing the demonstration landscaping along the Cherry Creek Trail? Is that recreation? Is that in collaboration with Denver Water? And
Are you
do you know
talking
this
about Carmel and Takayama? Park.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Can
we
you
funded
talk a
part of
little
that.
bit about that and the
Yeah.
status, and because we've had some presentations?
Yeah. I don't know all of the details. We did fund it through our LTAP program. So we've kind of been waiting on report outs from them. So it's like it's in process. The last I heard, they had killed the turf and possibly done a dormant seeding over the winter, which wouldn't have been as successful as you would hope because we didn't get the snow to enact that. So it's in process. If it's anything like what the mix that they did for Quebec medians, there they had over 60 species of grass and forbs for that area. So it's the same idea, really, a focused water conservation project in partnership with the city and an area that Denver Parks and Rec had decided was a good spot for native conversion, but I don't have details on the seed mix or anything like that. It's just kind of in process. And the thing to note for areas like that, when you're starting anything from seed, is that you are literally watching grass grow. So it's going to look ugly before it looks good.
Well, there's still just some straw. There's lots of straw, and then there's areas that has no straw. And so to follow up, I assume that Parks and Recreation, they're monitoring it.
Yeah. They're taking care of all of the
Right.
implementation and maintenance.
I have
And
a
Great.
question.
I can
Then
give
can
you,
I ask two?
Go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to share water savings on Quebec medians with you. So that was a 10-acre conversion, and after the first year, we saved 8.5 million gallons of water on that project. And again, that's before it was fully established. So expanses this large, I want to say that project that you're talking about is like 9-ish acres. So the impact for water savings is pretty large there. And go ahead with your
So
question.
how long do you think it'll take?
It takes about 3 years for a native grass landscape to be fully established. And the first year, it's really important to stay on top of weed mitigation because it can get kind of wild looking. So we call it kind of the awkward teenage years. So it's a slow process, but will eventually be a cohesive low water landscape, but it does take some patience.
We just, because the whole committee had a presentation on it, and we don't know where we are in it, or if it's, sometimes things kind of get forgotten and it's a little bit of an eyesore. Then a personal question.
Yeah.
I live in density. I assume that we're allowed to fill our pool.
I haven't heard anything that says that you cannot. Really, the ask is like the target is at overhead spray irrigation and saving 20%. So like if you aren't managing a landscape, it's focusing on doing fewer loads of laundry or high efficiency fixtures in your home. I don't think we're penalizing pool filling at this point.
Okay, thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thanks.
I have a question about trees. So, first of all, the Denver tree canopy is so important, and you have Denver Digs Trees that was started years ago, where they give out some trees. But what are the best trees that will provide that canopy at a lower water ratio?
Well, the thing with tree canopy is that we live in the plains. So large shade trees are not native to this area. But once you establish a large shade tree, it requires ongoing irrigation, but way less water than maintaining a full bluegrass landscape. So it's not necessarily like you need to focus on specific tree types. Now I would recommend looking at the city forester's list of recommended trees for Denver. A couple that I can support and really like are the Kentucky coffee tree. I really like the Western Catalpa. It's a really beautiful large shade tree that does well here. But just making sure that when you're planting a tree or selecting a tree, you're coordinating with what the city forester recommends, and then being careful of like if you're planting in a right of way, making sure you're obeying all the codes and regulations for right of way with tree plantings. And you bring up a good point. So Denver is one of the hottest cities in the country. And so, as you're saying, tree canopy is so important. And we know that if we're ripping out a bunch of turf there are trees that rely on the irrigation for that turf in the same landscape. And so there could be unintended consequences of a bunch of trees dying if we are not super mindful about it. So we have to really educate folks that when they're using a sod cutter, to really stay away from the tree root zone. And that if you are pulling up turf and getting rid of irrigation, you need to retrofit the irrigation and really account for what the tree needs in that landscape. And we're still encouraging people to plant trees this year. We want to expand and protect the tree canopy. We work with the park people who run the Denver Digs Trees program, and we fund a large portion of trees that are planted in the community. So really trying to be mindful, rely on the tree experts, and make sure that we're not losing that as we're telling people to use less water and pull out the grass.
Doug?
Yeah, can I ask about bushes and hedges and things like that? Is it worth it to take out turf and then replace it with things like um, arborvitae or boxwoods or things like that? Or do they use as much water as turf does?
They're not going to use as much water as turf grass, and you have to think about like when you're irrigating a shrub, you're doing like targeted irrigation, and the ideal scenario would be drip irrigation at the base of the plant rather than like overhead spray. You know, I would still recommend looking at drought tolerant, climate adapted, native plants that will thrive in our area. And there are plenty of shrubs that fit into that category, but it doesn't mean that you can't have non-native shrubs if that's the aesthetic that you want. I think the goal would just be to water them as efficiently as possible, which would be through drip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a really terrific presentation. And I think there are a lot of resources that people can dig into, pun intended. And I think that if we can have you back at some point, you know, we have certainly talked from time to time about how we can maybe better especially in Cherry Creek, the corners. You know, you don't want so much landscaping there that it's hard to see around, and sometimes that can get, but it would be really nice if we could even get people to start there. Take out that turf, do something there and see how it works, and then move into the yards. And I think I mean, that would be something that if people were interested, you know, maybe you could hire somebody to pick up a sod cutter for a day and everybody could contribute. I mean, these are wonderful things to do to build community within the RNOs and within the neighborhoods, and provide for a really great result. So those are some wonderful ideas. I love what you did with your yard. It's just so fun. Um, Blisters aside, I'm sure you'd absolutely love it. So if there aren't any other questions, I will speak for everyone and tell you thank you so, so much. And we are about at our closing time anyway. So if for the good of the order, if anybody has anything else, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll bring this meeting to a close. Anybody? Don't see any hands. So, yes.
I just want to make a plug that I'm happy to talk at any future meetings, and that it's okay to start small on these projects. So I think your idea of corners and creating demonstration areas and getting the community comfortable with these landscapes is a really good first step. And then I also wanted to offer that I can check in with Parks and Rec and get a real detailed update on what's going on at Carmel and Takayama Park. And I can just send that to you, Lou, to share with us.
That'd be fabulous. That would really be fabulous. I know all of us who go by there are really curious and hopeful that it will be the beautiful place that we love to walk and ride bikes by. So thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. I'll have this up tomorrow and send you all a link. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.